At OFCCP, we enforce the law, and not just for the benefit of workers. The work we do also levels the playing field for employers. After all, businesses that play by the rules, including so many of you in this room, shouldn't have to compete at a disadvantage against those who don't. And by now, most of you have heard about President Obama talk about winning the future. He has called on us to envision the country we want to be and then work together to put in place the infrastructure, the reforms, and the innovation that will take us there. But progress doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in a movement. And it's up to all of us, government, individuals, business, and workers, community leaders, and ordinary citizens to build that movement together. We are fortunate to have a great foundation from which to start. Shirley is a student of history, and I would be remiss if I didn't share a little of what I've learned from her. And this is a very interesting history of the OFCCP. The first executive order prohibiting discrimination by federal contractors was signed by FDR at the outset of World War II. It only covered defense contractors. Over the years, that initial effort was expanded, and the first presidential action to mandate affirmative action by contractors was Executive Order 10925, signed by President Kennedy in 1961. And he was implementing recommendations from a committee on government contracts that was established by his predecessor, President Eisenhower. The committee was headed then by Vice President Richard Nixon. 4.5 years later, Lyndon Johnson built upon Kennedy's legacy by issuing Executive Order 11246, a landmark civil rights law, as you know, requires equal employment opportunity. And finally, in 1978, it was President Jimmy Carter that reorganized oversight of this requirement under the U.S. Secretary of Labor. And that, my friends, is the story of how 6 presidents from both political parties helped create OFCCP. Many of you are familiar with the work my agency does. For those who are not, let me give you a short synopsis. At OFCCP, we hold those who do business with the federal government, contractors and subcontractors, to the fair and reasonable standard that they not discriminate on the basis of race, gender, color, religion, national origin, disability, or status as a protected veteran. Taxpayer dollars must never be used to discriminate by those who earn contracts to provide goods and services to our government. And as it turns out, nearly 1 in 4 Americans work for a company that receives federal funds for contracted work. That's nearly 200,000 businesses with contracts totaling almost $700 billion. Our laws protect all the employees of these businesses. And given the breadth of our purview, OFCCP's enforcement actions tend to have a ripple effect across the entire workforce. We in the federal government have a responsibility to model the good behavior in our employment practices. It's part of the public trust that we hold. We also believe our vendors should be accountable to similar standards of equal opportunity and fair play. In short, our job is to protect workers, promote diversity, and enforce the law. But one of the really unique features of OFCCP is that we regularly audit businesses, including academic institutions, for federal contracts, even when there's not a specific complaint. We know oftentimes that workers may be unaware of the discrimination that they face. So each year, OFCCP uses a neutral scheduling process to select almost 4,000 federal contractors for an audit to ensure that they are complying with the law. Voluntary compliance is always our goal, and I know that it is your goal too. We aim to support the good faith efforts of businesses who want to do right by their workers, so each year we provide thousands of hours of compliance and technical assistance to teach contractors how to comply with the law. In this regard, we need your help and your partnership. As many of you know, academic institutions don't follow the mold of most employers and workplaces, and therefore we need to update our compliance procedures, protocols, and training with regard to how we evaluate colleges and universities. This is a discussion I welcome and one which I'm eager to have with the leadership of 4A and with all of you. And you should know that for those employers who refuse to comply with the law, we are aggressively going after them. pursuing litigation against the worst offenders, and even seeking to cancel their current contracts and debar them from entering into future ones if they won't live up to their obligations. Being a federal contractor is a privilege. It is not a right. And with that privilege comes a responsibility to abide by the law and provide equal employment opportunity. In most cases, we are able to find a mutually agreeable resolution. And when we do, we seek make-whole remedies for the victims. And that concept of make-whole is really important. Because what it does is it recognizes discrimination demeans us as individuals, as businesses, as a government, and as a country. So we seek to remedy discrimination and make the victims whole through financial remedies like back wages, benefits, and interest. We also seek to get them good jobs. Think of it. You walk into an interview, you don't get the job, but may have no idea why you were rejected. A few years later, the government knocks on your door and says, you were qualified for that job. You didn't get it because a company discriminated against you. We figured it out, and on your behalf, we got the company to take corrective action. Here's a check for some of your wages and benefits and interest that you would have earned but for the discrimination. And by the way, if you're still interested, the company has agreed to prioritize hiring you the next time a position becomes available. We at the OFCCP right or wrong. We get to make people whole again. It's a pretty amazing job. I'm going to close there because I want to leave time to answer some of your questions. Many of you know that we at OFCCP have been pursuing an ambitious agenda of reform. Now that we're back at Shirley status, we are increasing our enforcement activities, revising our regulations, and embarking on broad community outreach and worker education efforts. So I want to hear from you about what we are doing well and what we could do better. I want to hear your feedback on the rules that we are proposing to strengthen affirmative action for veterans, for people with disabilities, and to increase the employment of women and minorities in the construction industry. I want to hear from you about the work we are doing to close the pay gap between men and women in this country, a project that is critical to President Obama's economic agenda. And I want to hear from you on how our enforcement activities can best protect workers. In closing, let me say that we've made great progress, but the work remains unfinished. We work in the light of Shirley Wilshire, and we promise to leave that light on for the next generation of civil rights lawyers who will follow. We do so because we know that civil rights must be tied to workers' rights, that ideals without real opportunity are just words. So our work on behalf of the workers continues. Thank you.